Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Good evening and good morning, no matter where you're listening to us, around the nation, around the world, or who knows, maybe deep out into the cosmos. Possibly on the International Space Station, as we know they can check in at any time. Dr. Sky, Steve Cates, as we move on to another exciting edition, as you tell us, of the Dr. Sky Experience. Great information also from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, occasional celebrity guests, and as you heard about 24 hours ago, our dedication to subjects of American exceptionalism and many other topics. As we continue, ladies and gentlemen, you are the reason we have this particular show, and we always welcome you, your conversational points in a dialogue. Please feel free to give us a call with your questions and comments at 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222, which of course stands for WABC. Emails, we love those, DRSKY, Dr. Sky at WABCRadio.com. And to follow our podcast archive, you can simply go back to the flagship website, WABCRadio.com, or continuing on RedAppleAudioNetworks.com. I want to thank our helmsman of this edition of the Dr. Sky Experience. As I say thank you to Bill, as he navigates the powerful signal of 77 WABC, of course, across the airwaves to the nation, the world, and again, I'm sure, out to the cosmos. Reminds me when I was a child in Hackensack, New Jersey. We went down to the swamp area about a mile from the hill that we lived on in Hackensack to the monstrous tower, the powerful source of where you're hearing this radio station as it beams around the world. And also, ladies and gentlemen, so many other things happening. In hour number one, we're going to do a little refresh on a subject matter that's been near and dear to so many of you, not only in the New York City region, the Northeast, but also around the world, about the very strange drones that have been seen in our skies back in October and November, with still, to date, no qualified answer as to what exactly the nature and the origin of those items were. As we continue, ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce in just a moment our very first guest of this particular hour, no stranger to the microphone here. His name is Captain Ron Janix in the real world. He's the host of Beyond Contact, a proud owner of Contact in the Desert, the largest UFO and UAP paranormal conference in the world that just wrapped up. You can follow more about them at contactinthedesert.com. And continuing with this subject, Captain Ron, that's so popular, good morning to you, and thank you for spending some time with us. How are you?
Hey, my friend, I'm great. Just hot off of Contact in the Desert.
Yes, and that's something that I want to make sure, hopefully, everybody within the sound of our voice, if they're really in tune with this particular subject, they have an opportunity to experience this. Describe it again for anybody who didn't hear our first interview about a month or so ago, and then we'll get deep into the subject matter at hand, because I'm sure at 1-800-848-9222, there's going to be, I'm sure, a lot of questions and concerns.
Well, we had over 2,000 people there. We had over 60 speakers, 10 podcasters, 5 filmmakers, and, you know, there's 6 different stages going at any single time of day. And it just builds upon itself. And we had a really incredible year this year. We had the off-site thing with Mark D'Antonio, where we took buses out into the desert to look at the night sky, which went really well. Awesome. And, you know, we just had a great time. This was one of the most exciting events. The reviews have been so much stronger than they've been in the past. It's unbelievable.
From your side of the equation, all the way across America, I know you're coming to us live from somewhere in California, a location, of course. Talk to us about the increased popularity in this subject, which is pretty obvious. But tell us, I mean, is it triple-fold, or who knows? Maybe it's even a bigger scale than that. It goes off geometrically and then logarithmically. But this is a really popular topic. And what's the topic, ladies and gentlemen? The whole study of this whole UFO, UAP subject. And as we get into it with Captain Ron, Talk about the popularity of this, because everywhere I go, I mean, I just hear people talking about this, and they're really curious.
Well, they are really curious, and I'll tell you something, Dr. Sky, that I've personally noticed. You know, this was our third year of doing Contact in the Desert, and so each year I do different little TV shows in Palm Springs and LA, KTLA, and, you know, kind of promoting the event. And 3 years ago, the questions were very general. So what's going on with UFOs? You know, very broad. Now, it seems like even like the newscasters and the people at the local newspapers are very informed. They're like, what did you think about the May 1st briefing in front of Congress? And what did you think about this and that? Like, they're really specific. It seems like there's just a general awareness of what's happening in this area, and it's really nice to see.
Well, I probably asked the most ridiculous question, and I have to ask it because I'm so many people, if they're not going to call us, and I'm sure they will throughout this program. The question is, why haven't we been told the truth about this? And it seems such a silly question to ask with all the evidence that's popping up everywhere, individuals. And another thing, Captain Ron, it's obvious that the technology has helped the average person out there who may not be a super photographer, a videographer, or someone that has extensive knowledge of the nighttime sky. You know, there's just something exploding all over the place, which I find fascinating. Again, the question is, in your opinion, what would you say? Why are we not being told about this? I wouldn't lose sleep over it, but maybe some people would. Well, what say you?
Well, I would say that if our government does have this, and I think they do have more knowledge about this and technology, and I think it's held in a small cabal. I don't think it's like the whole government knows. I think there's a small group that owns this. Throughout history, Dr. Sky, the person who has the best technology wins the war. It's been that way going way back to day one. So I think if you have this knowledge, what's the impetus to share it? I think that they want to keep it. Maybe they have free energy. Maybe they have, you know, weaponry. There's no reason to let the rest of the world know about it. So I think they have no impetus to share that knowledge, and I don't see them doing so anywhere in the future.
Well, here's a great impetus, obviously common sense, to light up the phone lines like fire at 1-800-848-9222, and the general question goes out to the audience. You know, why are we not being told about this? Your answer is obviously good. It makes logical sense. But ever since the late 1940s, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've studied this, not as deep as you have, of course, but we've seen all these things. Kenneth Arnold flying over, let's say, southern parts of Washington, seeing these boomerang-shaped things. The Roswell story, which, of course, we'll get into, and so many other crashes. For instance, what about the one, Captain Ron, allegedly in Italy during this period of World War II? There was actually a captured craft. I mean, come on, folks. You know, this is incredible. Why are we, again, you've answered me, and again, I'm incredulous about this, and I sound naive maybe to say, well, wait a minute, Steve, they don't want you to know the answers to this. But it goes deeper than that. So, you know, comment more about this. I mean, you have a vast audience there that are believers. They have evidence. They have lots of information. But then on the other side of the coin, the detractors of the UFO story and the whole experience say, well, where is one credible shred of evidence that you can show me, that you can put on a table and say, hey, this metal or something is not from the earth. We've examined it. Or any other thing that they could say that, where's the captured equipment? It seems so sterile, doesn't it?
It does, and I don't think we have that, as they call it, smoking gun. We don't have the tailpipe from a flying saucer or the sports model. We don't have that. But we have an awful lot of other evidence of witnesses, eyewitness accounts, military people coming forward. You're talking about that case in Italy. That's from 1933, the Magenta case, and that Mussolini recovered that. So that's incredible. That's how far this goes back. So I think there's just a preponderance of evidence, and not to mention the underwater, the USOs that they have.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so this is just, again, it just piles up, and everything's another brick in the wall. And we have deathbed confessions, and we had Harold Malmstrom, at the end of February, right before he died, saying that he knew of craft and bodies, and he wanted his daughter to know. You know, that's compelling to me.
It is. Absolutely. You know, I want to hear about you again. That's why we have you as a guest here. Talk about the face of Beyond Contact. I mean, you're doing this ongoing archive in the form of a podcast. I mean, talk about some of the great people you get on there. And obviously the overwhelming, these guests that you have, they're more what? Of course, on the positive side, that the government's hiding something, and we all should know.
Well, sure. And we've recently had Ross Cohart, not only at our event, but he was on our podcast. Ross is doing an incredible job of getting this to a wider audience on News Nation Network. And he recently uncovered a new thing from Greenland. They have an incredible UFO video of an unexplained light in the sky that came over this mountain that I saw. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's great to have Ross out there pushing this forward. I think he's pretty much becoming almost the face of mainstream media-ish, if you want to call it that, for pushing this agenda of getting this knowledge out to the world for us.
Captain Ron, let's do a deep dive into an article that just appeared days ago in the Wall Street Journal. The title of the article is "The Pentagon Disinformation That Fueled America's UFO Mythology." You and I both know about this, and basically the whole tenet in here is that the military went to great lengths, and I'm talking about long, long lengths, to give out these cover stories about maybe UFOs being, housed, whatever you want to call it, disassembled, reverse engineered at Area 51, all for the purpose of what? Common sense. You would think you don't want people to know about your secret aircraft projects. At the time, maybe the F-117 stealth fighter at the time, a very early edition and iteration of stealth, and so much more. Deep dive into that for people who may not know about that. I mean, that's a revelation that makes kind of common sense if you're the government. But how believable is that to you? Or,
I think it's completely believable. Of course it is. Does that explain everything? Is that the be-all, end-all? No. Did they do this? I'm sure. We had guys like Richard Doty. Immediately when I read that article, I thought of Richard Doty and the whole Benowitz case, how he purposely disinformed and manipulated people to believe that this was alien craft, so they didn't think it was our craft. I get that. I'm sure that happens. I'm sure that went on. As Ryan Graves said today, he said that that doesn't explain why our military is seeing objects in the sky every day today. And it doesn't explain these other things. Lou Elizondo came out on News Nation with Chris Cuomo earlier and said the same thing. He said, yeah, we've been doing that for 100 years, but that does not, that's not the final answer.
Well, Captain Ron, think about all the people that are listening here, the prima facie base of Talk Radio 77 WABC, the New York metro area and the tri-state area. They're seeing over the last October and November all these strange things that some say are drones. Never got an answer to that. That's a whole nother bizarre story. But I knew you would do this magically, fire up the phone lines here, because why not? This is a great topic. Let's welcome Joan in New York City to the conversation. Good morning, Joan. You're on with Captain Ron, who studies this.
Hi. Yes, I have a question. I have a statement, a comment on the UFO situation, but
please.
I also, would I be able to ask maybe later, tomorrow, tonight, a question about the moon, a general astronomical question? Will you be
Joan, not to cut you short, in our second hour, we are going to speak with space journalist Rod Pyle, and I'm going to do what I haven't done for a while. Yes, Joan, I'm going to be talking about the moon, a very strange and unusual, beautiful full moon, so we'll be covering that, and you can call back in, of course. But, yeah.
I'll call back. Well, can I speak twice in one night?
I have no limit on this. Nobody said I can't do that, and you know why?
Oh.
Because we want to have a dialogue with people. It's all about conversation, don't you think?
Okay. So what I want to say about the UFO situation is we need to know, obviously, we need to know what's happening. But many people are sort of welcoming the idea. They think it's very exciting. We'll meet extraterrestrials and they'll share their advanced knowledge with us. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking of what your guest just said. I think he said the society with the superior technology wins the war. And if you apply that to extraterrestrials, I'm thinking of Dr. Michio Kaku, the physicist.
Oh, we know him, yes.
Yeah. Now, he said he used to think it was very exciting, the idea of contacting extraterrestrials. But then a friend of his, also a scientist, said to him, be careful what you wish for, because when a superior society contacts an inferior society, the inferior society gets destroyed. He said, just think about what you do when you walk down the street and you see an anthill. You don't walk over to the ants and say, let me share my superior technology with you.
You're right, Joan.
Step on it.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me go ahead and have Captain Ron respond here and please do call back in the next hour for the astronomy side. We'll go through that then.
Great.
But
Terrific.
Captain Ron,
Thank you.
see, we get amazing, invigorating, conversation here, don't you think?
I think that was an excellent point. And, Stephen Hawking said that too. We should not be raising our hand and flashing our lights to say, look, we're here, because who knows who you're attracting? You're
right.
And that's a great point.
And, Joan, they brought up something else, too. I know Captain Ron knows this, the thing called the Fermi paradox. And for people who are not familiar with this, Enrico Fermi, one of the great nuclear physicists, developing the original atomic bomb and the, fission bomb like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he basically was sitting with Robert Oppenheimer and they're having lunch. And the short story is Fermi then looked at Oppenheimer and he said, with all these different stories about extraterrestrials out there in space, supposedly, he thinks that because they're so far advanced, there might be some sort of what, Captain Ron and Joan? Some kind of a wall of non-penetration that they don't want to contact us. That's another interesting thing that the Fermi paradox, and I've just covered it in a short time, goes into much more detail, don't you both think?
Oh, it does. And also you could think that, they're clandestine for a reason. If they are coming here and these ships are from off-planet and are alien craft, then they obviously don't want to be seen or widely known about, or they could just park it right down on the ground and announce themselves. So
wouldn't that be
are
amazing?
Choosing to be clandestine.
Right.
That would be
Joan,
fantastic.
call us back in the next hour. We're more than happy to discuss the side of the beauty of what's in the nighttime sky. But time is limited here, but never that we cannot talk to our great guests and people, of course, that call in. Good morning to Tony in Glen Cove. You're on with Captain Ron talking about the UFO UAP experience. How are you this morning?
Good. How are you? Thank you.
Doing fine.
Just want to talk about the drone situation. I was driving home plenty of times, and I've seen them over the airport, over the highway. There's no way they were UFOs. They were actual drones, and I believe they were ours. This is just my opinion, and I think that what's coming down the pike is something bad that the government's going to pull off, because it's a little funny how they were over the airports, according to people. They were over our bases. They were traveling in certain times for people to see if they were able to be seen by people at certain times. They charted out hours. They charted out the way they were going to go. So it was down the pipe, just like they called. There was going to be COVID-19, and it happened. It's pretty sick that this was even allowed for somebody to say that, and he didn't go to prison for it.
Well, that's a whole other subject. You're right. But, Tony, I'm with you.
Belief.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tony. I mean, all the people in the New York metro area and the East Coast and other parts of the country saw these anomalies in the sky. Some of them described what, Tony, as the size of an SUV. But let Captain Ron jump in on this, because we still, right, Captain, we have no answer to this. I mean, even the Trump administration said, well, there's no threat. There were research projects. Well, who? Don't you think we need to know?
Well, that was a pretty thin answer to me. That's not very good. Come on. But, today, maybe it was yesterday, but in the last 24 hours, Trump signed an executive order to, I think it's going to limit the drones or the rogue drones that we can go after those, that their Navy can't. And that, I haven't read all about it yet, but that just happened in the last 24 hours, which I think might help us get to the bottom of it.
Well, I hope so. Tony, you get the last word. I mean, what do you think on this? All these people seeing this.
If it was an enemy, it would have been shot down.
Of course. But then again, wait a minute, Tony. Yeah, let me stop you for a minute respectfully. Remember the Chinese weather balloon? In the last administration, it flew over sensitive military locations, didn't get a shoot-down order, right? How about that?
This is what they tell you.
Right.
It wasn't the enemy. This is just like the COVID-19 didn't come from Wuhan. This is what they tell you. It's nonsense. I'm just telling you my belief. They're going to do a grid blowout. They're going to send these things out one night. They figured out what time's the best time to go out. They figured out the best route to go out. They figured it out. It's going to sit on the grid. People are going to be with days. I don't know what kind of disaster they're planning next, but it's not going to be another disease. It will not be another disease.
Let's hope there's no disaster coming. But, Tony, I like you more for another personal reason. Most of my relatives and aunts and uncles lived in that beautiful enclave of Glen Cove. How about that, Tony? There you go.
Oh, no kidding.
Absolutely, brother.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, thank you for calling.
Nice.
I appreciate your time as we move on here. You know, Captain Ron, this is so incredible. I mean, we're seeking answers here. And for so long, going back to that Wall Street Journal article, you know, talking about what's pretty obvious to most people, a true disinformation campaign put out by the military to cover up about secret projects that are military projects like the F-117 Stealth. And maybe many people don't know this. I've been there, and I hate to use the word taken out of that area. I don't know. Have you ever been there, Ron, and removed?
I have not. No, sir.
No, I have, but that's another story from the time. But the point is, we've covered this because we did a lot with the historian of the CIA at the time, a gentleman named David Robarge, who talked about the development of the A-12, the predecessor to the SR-71. And we've spoken, I've interviewed so many of these people who were there. So again, it gives credence to this article that you don't want people to know about your super secret, you know, spy planes or Lockheed SR-71s and all those type of aircraft. So what do? They just put out these stories as great disinformation. But I don't know. I think people are too smart to think that that's the real truth behind everything, of course, right?
Well, yeah, and certainly back in the day, they probably got away with it a lot more because we lived in a different world. There were 3 news channels. We didn't have the world of social media and internet and interconnected, media that we have today. So I think they got away with it easier back in the day, and it would make sense to just do that. You don't want to reveal to your enemies or anybody what you have. So why would you not naturally do that? That doesn't mean some UAPs may not be of this earth. It just means that that's what they're doing to hide their tech.
Well said. Let's talk about this whole event that just happened, Contact in the Desert. Describe where it was held, because to many people who've never been to this part of the country, it would be the envy of anybody who wanted to see a beautiful resort. Describe where it was held and what was the total time and duration for this whole conference.
It's a 5-day event. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's at a Vegas-style hotel, over 600 rooms, beautiful, huge pools, just fantastic, just gorgeous. And that's the setting for this. And, again, we had well over 2,000 people there that were really excited to be there. You know, it's kind of like a pilgrimage to come out there.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And it's out in the desert, and it just kind of adds to the whole feeling. You know, we had people from all over the world. I met people from Switzerland, Belgium, Brazil. Incredible.
Well, I'm kind of jealous, and I guess many of the listeners out there, as they check your website out here, contactinthedesert.com. When's the next event? Is it always the same time period in the future for 2026?
It's not always, but yes, it's going to be the same first weekend in June next year, right after Memorial Day, that following weekend next year, same location. We're all staying at that hotel. People love it. They love it.
Oh, yeah. Well, give us a quick synopsis before we go to the hard break here in just a few minutes at the bottom of the hour, of course. Talk about the consensus. I mean, all these people were speaking, all these people, lots of them very, very deeply involved in this, obviously authors, people of research and deep backgrounds. What's the whole consensus that you walk away with as you, the owner of this project and the one who ran it?
Well, Gordon Peckrell's the owner with me, and he and I felt that the whole event sort of had this, people kept saying cohesiveness. So, there's a lot of division in this community, but we felt this event was very cohesive. It's a funny word that a lot of the attendees were saying to us, that it just sort of felt like, hey, we're getting all on the same page. We're all kind of pushing for disclosure. We're getting closer now to actually having congressional hearings and getting some of these eyewitnesses and skiffs. They're bringing out the UAP bill again in 5 weeks, and they're going to try to push that through. That could make a big difference, Dr. Sky.
Well, I hope so. And you have some of the big broadcast names there. George, of course, from Coast, and you have also
both Georges from Coast, George Knapp and George Norrie.
Wow, you have powerhouse speakers, powerhouse broadcasters, and of course Clyde Lewis of his radio program Ground Zero. And were there any other newbies there? I mean, you have a lot of up and coming podcasters. Anybody that you would recommend to people that are listening?
Well, we had Josh Gates there from the Expedition Unknown, who was fantastic. The audience loved him. And the big thing for me was this Dr. Diane Hennessy. Her and the telepathy tapes with Hakeem Eisler. We did a live demonstration of a mother and her young daughter who is an autistic savant, and they demonstrated what really appeared to be a telepathic communication live in front of an audience. It was incredible. That was the highlight of the show.
No, that's totally amazing. We did an interview a few months ago on remote viewing, and I think I might have confused the audience, not my intention, of course, because that subject itself is kind of bizarre. I use the word bizarre respectfully, that an individual, as this individual came on, I'm not going to name him right now, he was working with the CIA, and he claims that he has this ability to transmit his own, I don't know, he has like a television camera telepathically. He could identify where Soviet submarines were that we couldn't find, and he was actually accurate. So the point I'm trying to make, and I know you're behind this, and listeners, I'm sure, have opinions, is that there's so many mysteries out there that we have no clue to. But this one, cohesive, as we talk with you, Captain Ron, on this particular event, Contact in the Desert. Folks, plenty of time to get in with your questions and comments, as we love to have in this particular format, the Dr. Sky Experience, what we call a dialogue. It's a two-way conversation. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222, which simply stands for WABC. So when we come back after the break, I'd like to get into some of the specifics of the great UFO stories, the Barney and Betty Hill experience, the story of Roswell, and some of the other ones that you and I were just briefly, mentioning. The one that happened in, Project Magenta, is that the one you called in Italy? Is that correct?
Magenta, that's the city in Italy that Mussolini found that UFO, yep.
That's incredible. This is great information here. And again, give us the way to reach you for your podcast so people, of course, can chime in as we move through time and space.
Everything's at contactinthedesert.com. Our social media is on there. The website, the webcast is on there. The podcast, it's all right on contactinthedesert.com.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for opening your minds as we talk about these great mysteries, no matter where you're listening or calling us or just listening for the sake of enjoyment as we open up, and in our opinion, all about the mysteries that are going on in the universe right now. This particular format, if you're a new listener, talks about these subjects and mysteries in astronomy, space, aviation, weather, added in to add to the whole story. Great celebrity guests, American exceptionalism, and many other things that make the world go around. We'll be right back here on the Dr. Sky Experience with our special guest, Captain Ron, on the other side of this break.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At Capella University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can finish the bachelor's degree you started in 19 months and under $19,000. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by PACE, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at Friskies.com or visit your local store.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
A program note, tune in Monday morning at 6:25 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time as Sid Rosenberg interviews Harvey Weinstein on Sid and Friends in the Morning, an exclusive interview here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Don't miss it. As we continue to move on, ladies and gentlemen, at 33 minutes after the hour, an apropos quote that I think fits surely into the conversation. And here it goes. The universe is a pretty big place. If it is just us, it seems like an awful waste of space. The words of the late Carl Sagan. With us is Captain Ron. He, of course, is coming fresh out of the Contact in the Desert experience and sharing many of those thoughts and, well, as we say, ideas on this whole concept of maybe why we never have heard the truth about the whole story of UFOs and UAPs. Captain Ron, thanks for being here. This is awesome. I appreciate your time.
I love it, man. It's always fun talking about these things.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the historical things here. We talked a little bit about the Wall Street Journal article, which shows again that the government has put in high gear a total disinformation campaign to, well, let us think that we're foolish and that, we're going to cover up the real secrets of what we're doing there by talking about UFOs. But the whole community that you're involved in, and many people out there listening, I'm a believer myself, but I would love to see evidence. Let's talk a little bit about this whole Magenta story that you seem to know so much more about it in Italy. Tell us what happened, and it's kind of interesting because this goes way back in time.
It goes way back to 1933, and apparently the little bit I do know about it, and I think they're going to be doing a documentary on it very soon, was that Mussolini, they recovered a craft with bodies and everything, and Mussolini had it in a hangar, and somehow we negotiated to get that. And the U.S. government, apparently recovered that craft, and they're going to tell that whole story. It's amazing how these start going back further than 1947. We often think of Roswell or Kenneth Arnold, 1947, as sort of the modern UFO, but there are other cases that go back even earlier. This one's from 1933.
That's amazing. 1-800-848-9222 to get in the conversation. Maybe you've experienced one of these objects, and maybe you have some other definitive information. Maybe you've got imagery, videos, who knows? We'd love to hear your comments and questions in the form of a dialogue. You know, this is interesting. I want to talk a little bit with you about Roswell and the Magenta story, really. I could go on for hours about it, but time doesn't permit. The whole Roswell experience to me is so baffling. I've been there. I've spoken. I'm sure you've been there. I'm sure you've covered this A to Z. Something really did happen there. And from every single person that I've talked to, this is like totally ridiculous. Why are we not being told, again, I sound naive, the whole story of Roswell? And it all started, in my world, a professor I had in school was Dr. Tombaugh. He discovered Pluto back here in Arizona in 1930. Well, in New Mexico State, he told me he witnessed the July 16th, 1945 explosion of the first nuclear test out in the deep desert. But right after that, Captain Ron, comes all these sightings. So somehow, and we go into this, I'd like your take on all these different nuclear-type facilities all seem to have these UFO, UAPs swarming around them, but it seemed to have started with the detonation of this, device or the gadget in the desert back then. That's so amazing. And look what happened next, Roswell.
There's definitely a big piece of that in the folklore is that this is what drew attention to the rest of the universe. You can imagine that we can detect the biosphere of planets now. You can imagine somebody more advanced than us would be able to detect certainly a nuclear blast. That would draw anybody's attention because that could do, ongoing damage. So you can imagine that that's why they were nosing around here and coming here. And oftentimes, look how often these cases are around nuclear bases, nuclear sites. And a lot of the people that claim to have a contact experience, one of the messages they get is, don't use nuclear weapons, take care of your planet. So it all sort of ties in, and it fits. It makes rational sense to me that that's what another civilization would be concerned about. You guys want to just play around on yourself on your own planet, that's fine. Start getting into nuclear weapons, and it's the next level.
Well, Captain Ron, this one's even more phenomenal to me. A long time ago, I had the interview with Captain Solis there at Malmstrom Air Force Base. A long time ago. This goes back. I think he's still alive.
Year.
Oh, he'll go. Gee, I'd love to have shaken his hand.
He was here this weekend.
And I'm totally impressed. But here's another iteration of the Wall Street Journal article that ties into this. For everybody who's listening, this is the story. Back in March of, I believe, 1967, a strange blue light seems to hover out of the sky, and the Air Force MPs are, calling this particular captain, saying, "You're not going to believe this, Captain." Well, he goes outside. All his different, MPs are out there. And what is the blue light? Now, not to steal your thunder, Captain Ron, but the blue light goes over each one of the ready-to-go nuclear missiles in the ground, in the silos, and shuts them off and darts into the sky. And then the contractors from the government that built those silos with all the electronics, Well, this is what he told me. All the connectors, imagine big wires that are about 3 feet wide, not your typical, house wiring. They were melted. So what in good God's name did that when the thing darted off into the sky? But tell me, you've had him there. What was, in addition to what I'm saying, because there's another connection to the Wall Street Journal article. I'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, well, we had him and David Schindel, both nuclear witnesses. We had a whole nuclear panel that Steve Bassett moderated that discussed these different cases from different direct firsthand witnesses from the military who had these strange objects over the military base turning off nuclear capabilities. You can imagine it could be a foreign adversary, but boy, if they have that kind of technology, they're way ahead of us. But back in the day, if it's from off planet, they're showing us, hey, look, we have the ability to just turn this right down.
Well, Captain Ron, the Wall Street Journal article, people can read it in detail. We don't have time to cover every angle of it, but here it is. Here's the summation of the one at Maelstrom. This article purports that the government, their story on this is that they actually tested the security of the base and so-called, and I may use the word here, I'm not reading this, some sort of an electromagnetic, static charge that they deployed so that they would intentionally try to knock out these missiles with our own, in other words, our own people doing that. I mean, I have to laugh at that. How did they get in? You're not going to let people know that you're going to take offline nuclear rockets? I mean, it goes beyond absurdity, in my opinion. What say you on that one?
And especially back then, there were very, very, very few nuclear bases on the planet. So the security was so high, and these guys were direct witnesses. I think that's a reach to me. I feel like that's harder to believe than the UFO story, to be honest.
Well, it actually is, but here we're going to talk about geography right now. People in the New York metro area, the East Coast, have been seeing, as we repeat again, these UAPs, these different devices, some call drones, UAPs, whatever. And now, I wonder, from your perspective, where's the hotbed of this right now? And can you update us on anything going on with these UAPs that have been seen, not only in the East Coast? Is there a hotbed right now that we should know about where more of these are being seen? What would you say?
Well, that has spread all across the country, and it was all over the news. Have you noticed it's kind of gone away? Yet we had a lot of people at Contact talking about how they were seeing it or they're hearing it on social media, and people are posting videos. So it seems to still be happening, even though it's kind of got pushed off the newspaper front page. It's got pushed off the mainstream news coverage. So that's an interesting development.
Well, let me add something to the conversation, too, from the world of astronomy, too. And I know we're going to cover some of that in the next hour for an update on what you can see. But I know you know this, and people out there may not. With the number of satellites that SpaceX is launching, the Starlink satellites, there are these trains of satellites. I've seen them here in Arizona. I've seen them in other places. What's a train of satellites? You may see 30 or 40 objects in a complete straight line, slowly moving across the sky. Now, to the untrained eye, not making fun of anybody, you don't have to have a PhD in this to know, hey, I see something. But that is also something of Earth origin. So a lot of people may not know that. But what about all the other things, Captain Ron, that people are seeing that are not necessarily satellites, even though low Earth orbit is, in my opinion, polluted with so many spacecraft right now?
For sure. And there's no question that the vast majority of these claims are misidentification. It's dark. It's a light in the sky. There are so many things it could be, So the bottom line is you only need one of these things, one of these accounts to be authentic of non-human intelligence control, and that's a game changer. One.
Have you spoken at Roswell? Let me ask this over the years.
I didn't speak, but I've done interviews there. I've been to the museum. Sure. I've done tons of things there. I love it there. They're super nice. It's a cool little town. The alien things everywhere in that city. Yeah, it's great.
It's a great place to go, and it's coming up here, the July 4th weekend.
It is.
Coming up to Roswell to help their economy grow, folks, from something that hopefully one day we'll know so much more about. I have a lot of these other experiences, but I want to share them with you. When we come back, if we have opportunity to do this, we have people calling in from all over the country right now. We'll do our best to get to them. But I want to talk about some theories about what the actual beings that we don't have the evidence. Everybody talks about it in congressional hearings, that we do have captured bodies. But something I think fascinating that ties in, Captain Ron, with the whole thing of the Tic Tacs. This is an amazing story that we'll get to and get your comments and questions on this. Again, 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222, which simply stands for 9222 WABC, of course. Put it and lock it into your smartphone, and we do appreciate that. Well, we're coming up on another break, and Captain Ron will be back, and callers like Alice from Ohio and many others when we continue with the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
47 minutes after the hour, as we move to the top of a brand new hour, we say good morning to each and every one of you, or good evening, no matter where you're listening or calling us. Well, Captain Ron, let's go to the phone calls as we can get as many of them in to the top of the hour. Let's say good morning to Alice from Ohio. Good morning, Alice. How are you today?
Good morning. Very well. Thank you for asking. Interesting show. You could do a whole evening on this.
Yes.
In the mid 80s, I was a flight attendant for a U.S. international flagship carrier. We were coming into JFK. We were diverted out of JFK to Boston Logan. We were put in a holding pattern. I was up in the flight deck while we were in the holding pattern, and we were looking straight ahead, and there appeared a straight line of the brightest lights I have ever seen that you could look at, and it wouldn't bother your eyes. You could see each light individually. It was coming towards us. And then I said, what is that? And then as I said that, it backed off. Very smooth motion.
Wow.
I don't know what I saw.
And you've spent a lot of time knowing in the air. You've seen plenty of things. So that one was off the charts.
I flew for nearly 30 years until 1991. Yes.
Wow.
And then we met in flight ops after we finally landed, and we had a discussion about it. And I don't know if you know this or not, but flight attendants and also the pilots keep logs, and we discussed it, and do not put it in your log.
Interesting. Wow, you were told that. That's incredible. Captain Ron, please continue. This is fascinating. Alice.
Oh, yeah, I have heard that over and over and over again from pilots and from crew people. And Todd Curtis, who spoke at Contact last year, talks about this very specific issue. There's no place to report it. People don't want to report it because they don't want to get reprimanded or lose their job or thought of as seeing things, but they say exactly how this account was. I have no idea what I was looking at. It's that kind of thing. They just don't have a place to put it. They don't even know what it could be. And, they're used to seeing different things in the sky, and they don't know what to do with it. There are so many reports out there that must not have ever been reported. It's unbelievable.
Well, Alice, you get the last word here because your sighting is very important, and what the key point that I get out of this is do not put it in the log. How about that?
I thought that was interesting. I didn't talk about it for years. For anyone. But we were the only people on board who saw it. It was dead ahead. The motion was very smooth. I was impressed with the brightness of the lights. Yes. We need to know more about this. We're not alone.
Absolutely. And thank you, Alice, for being part of the Dr. Sky Experience. Hope you'll be joining us for future editions of the program. And please, by all means, call in. Have a good morning. And thank you for joining us.
That's a great account.
I wanted to end off on something that's really deep, and it probably takes, as she mentioned, we should do this for hours. In the world of talking about these Tic Tacs, and for people who may not be aware of it, the sightings that the military had from the Nimitz, the aircraft carrier, nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and other support ships, back in 2003, 2004, the sightings of these things that look like a Tic Tac mint shape, but of course much larger, doing maneuvers that as we know, aerobatics cannot be done by technology that we believe we have, not the Russians, not the Chinese, and probably not us. But I always had this theory, and I wanted you to, kind of expand on it, that if you had the ability to warp space-time, because all gravity, I keep repeating this, is warpage of space-time. Gravity that's what it is. So if you had the ability to warp space-time, you theoretically could move back and forth through time. And let's say things got bad on the Earth. Riots, asteroid impacts, fires. Where did people start? They started in caves. Where would we go back? We would hide in these caves, let's say, if the surface of the Earth was not good. And then concluding my statement here, where this theory is that we hooked up with AI, and AI can't jump out of the box yet. It may then in the future maybe assimilates into a biomechanism. And what if it had, through AI, the ability to transport and move through time? Isn't it possible, Captain Ron, this may sound foolish to some, that they might have, the future iteration of humans being able to intersect with AI and move through time and space?
Well, we often hear that in the folklore, that it could very well. One of the theories, Dr. Michael Masters, is a big proponent of the theory that these alien, quote-unquote, alien visitors are in fact time travelers, us from the future coming back to visit us now. Now, the reality is, to me, that's tough to get my head around. It's certainly possible, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. It almost sounds like I need a shot of. It sounds like I need another shot of really good blended, whiskey, but the truth and scotch. But the truth of the matter, here's another bizarre thing. In one of the magazines that I'm reading here right now, which is the MUFON Journal, people give me copies of this. There's an article here, and the word itself sounds so technical. Infratempestrial hypothesis. What's that? Is that the same thing I just said about the future iteration of AI and this, event where humans moved on through time and space, could be thousands of years, that maybe these alien creatures are actually something from a previous time on Earth when life had a different generation of life form, and they also had the ability to do that. So front and back, they didn't leave anything untouched here, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard these theories, of course, and I think Michael Masters calls his the extraterrestrial theory. And, it's fascinating, and there's the idea that also these life forms could be living parallel to us, but they are hidden, as you were saying, under the ocean, in caves. They're hidden on our planet, but they're at a different frequency or whatever that we are unable to detect them. And we get flashes of them. That's possible.
You bet. Let's try one more.
These are harder things to get your head around, but they're possible.
You say it well. Let's try one more. I think we have Patrick from Brooklyn. Good morning. You'll have to be quick because time is of the essence. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes,
Hello?
You're on the air. You're on the air.
Oh, I'm on the air now. Oh, I'm sorry. I had stepped away to put something. The other lady called up in regards
Alice from Ohio.
Yes, and thank you for taking the call, Dr. Sky. With all due respect to Alice from Chicago, I've been on planes. What she had seen may be what's called in medicine refraction. And there are different types. There are about 10 different types of refraction. It's a deflection from a straight path as of light rays as they pass through media of different densities. There's angle of refraction, coefficient of refraction, double refraction.
Right, angle of incidence, angle of reflection. Right, you're correct.
Exactly, right. Okay. And I saw something once up in the sky, and but I'm not sure of what it was. But thank goodness we have doctors such as yourself, who know about the physics of things or certain mechanics. And thank you again, Dr. Sky.
No, I didn't get your first name, so I wanted to do proper justice to that. What is your first name? I'm sorry.
My first name, it's Baina Patrice.
Patrice. Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't read it off of our screen here. But look, thank you so much for being part of this show. We're never done with these subjects. And again, Patrice, I appreciate your time from Brooklyn. Let's give Captain Ron, the last word here as we go to the top of the hour. It's always a privilege and honor to listen to you, and I'm hoping that I can join up with you folks next year, and that would be an honor to be part of the conversation. I think we would definitely have a lot more to talk about.
Well, obviously, you're very well versed in all of these things, too, and you're spouting off cases and things, and it's great. Would love to have it. I'm just very excited about the whole movement that seems to be happening with more and more people being aware of what's going on and taking an interest in this. And I'm hoping that as that proliferates, we will get more to the bottom of what's going on.
Well, exactly. If anybody out there remembers the original Thing, the one with James Arness as the monster, he obviously played so much in Gunsmoke, but what do they say at the very end of it? I used to use that on another radio show as an outro, and it was simply something like this, and maybe we can pull it up sometime. It was watch the skies. Always watch the skies, because that's exactly what we talk about here. Our vision here in our daytime world, run by the sun, Captain Ron. Many people, of course, no fault of their own. They're doing their thing. They're doing the best they can for their families, and they're trying to get along and deal with their other disciplines that they have experienced. But looking up at the nighttime sky, that'll be my passion until, someday I pass on to the infinite. But I would hope in the infinite that we could do shows like this together. What do you think?
I love it, man. Anytime, brother.
Well, I appreciate your time. That's Captain Ron, and you can go to his website, contactinthedesert.com. Another big event going to happen probably, around this same time next year. And tell us the location again so people can take a look at and zoom into that beautiful resort in the California desert.
It's the Renaissance Esmeralda Hotel in Indian Wells, California. We're right in the Coachella Valley. We're right by where they hold Coachella.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Lots of activity there, and I'm sure it's blazing like it is here in Phoenix today, 107 degrees, and it ain't over yet, right? There you go.
Right.
Captain Ron, it's a privilege and honor. We'll be talking to you on the other side, and I don't mean the infinite side, but we'll have you again, my friend. Thank you so much. Have a good morning.
Hey, buddy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 1 in the history books, moving out through time and space. And yes, these radio signals do penetrate the ether, and I'm sure this broadcast and other great broadcasts are still going out there. From the original broadcasts that were out in the 1920s and even before, these radio signals, they continue to permeate the universe. More on the other side with a great guest. We're looking to speak with space journalist Rod Pyle and another good friend of mine, Richard Dugan of Tell Me Your Story. Conversations now more in the political realm of space. What could that be? As we talk about the feud or the non-feud between President Trump and Elon Musk, and also what happened to the nomination of Jared Isaacman. It's been pulled by the president. At least that's the latest news. We'll find out so much more when we come back here on the Dr. Sky Experience, where Talk Radio 77 WABC.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins. Just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag. The one you stole from your ex. Or your overpriced half a studio apartment. Or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar. Triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a vitamin water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked number 1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
This episode is brought to you by PetSmart. Stop by for Yappy Hour with your pet at PetSmart. Save $5 on walk-in grooming services like nail trims, ear cleaning, brushing, and more. No appointment needed every weekday from 2 to 6 p.m. And while you're there, Yappy Hour includes exclusive in-store deals like 25% off pet toys. Visit services.petsmart.com/grooming to learn more.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
3 minutes after the hour, thank you as we move through time and space to hour number 2 of the Dr. Sky Experience. If you're a first-time listener to the show, we welcome you, your family, and everybody else out there from the powerful signal here of Talk Radio 77, WABC. Emails, I love those and answer them all. DRSKY, Dr. Sky, at WABCRadio.com. And, of course, if you'd like to check our podcast archive, simply go to the flagship website, wabcradio.com or redappleaudionetworks.com for amazing information as you tell us. Our helmsman, Bill, navigates the powerful signal of this radio station across the airwaves to the nation, the world, and I'm sure out to the cosmos. And ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to go back to our original themes, astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, it's a privilege and honor to welcome two guests to this particular radio archive. And in this particular hour, we'll begin with no stranger to the microphone. He's been here many times in other programs as he does around the nation. Rod Pyle is a space historian and author. He's a space historian who has worked with NASA and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the Johnson Space Center. He has written 10 books on the history and technology of space exploration and science for major publishers in the U.S., the U.K., Asia, including so many of his very popular books. And also joining us throughout the hour is a good friend of mine, Richard Dugan, the host of a radio show in California. Been doing that for many years, called Tell Me Your Story. But let's begin and say hello to Rod. Good morning, Rod. Thanks for being here to talk about some other subjects that are going on in the realm of space. How are you?
Hello, Dr. Sky. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, my friend, talking about this. You write, and obviously just give us an update on the latest book you have. I mean, you've got so many out there that it's hard to keep track of.
Well, I'm working on number 21 now, which is still in stealth mode. But the last one I actually released 4 in 2019. And I think the last of those called Space 2.0. And it was a look ahead at the next 20 years of spaceflight. It's a little dated now because of the time I was writing things like someday soon Starship will take a test flight and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm working
and it's
on
it's already here, right? It's good. That's amazing.
Right.
You know, one of them that I really like, and sci-fi fans out there will get a really amazing thrill out of this book and want to keep it on their bookshelf. Blueprint for a Battlestar. Tell me about that. That's an awesome one. I love it.
That was 2016. That was a lot of fun. It was originally supposed to be something planned for a Death Star. But just as we were about to release the book, and this is through a UK publisher, Disney had bought the rights to Star Wars, and we all went, we better not say Death Star. So it changed to Death Planet, and then I said, let's just go with Battlestar, and that was fine. So it's basically a look at the science of sci-fi, what we have now and what we will have in the near future. And again, this is 9 years ago now, so it's a little dated. But it was a lot of fun because that's one of those times when, as happens about a third of the time, the publisher came to me and said, hey, we'd like to do this book. And I was like, great, I don't have to pitch it. And it's very copiously illustrated, and it was just a blast to be able. It's almost like a guilty pleasure, you know?
Well, when I'm ready to do a book, I want to call you because you've got the background and the experience and, of course, a leader in the space story here that we talk about in the space world.
Absolutely, and I can tell you all about how nobody makes a living writing space books anymore.
I understand that.
That's a different show.
Yeah, it is a different time in space, but let's also welcome Richard Dugan, a good friend of mine. He's a radio host in California, a lifelong friend, but the importance of him being here today, he is part of a great archive called Tell Me Your Story. Good morning, Richard. How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well. Just finished my first book and working on a film strip.
Boy, you guys are incredible. It's just amazing.
Wow.
But Richard, welcome. I want to jump into this, guys, because time's limited and we want to get the callers involved here at 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Rod on this one. This is fascinating. We're hearing something, and I was all excited about this. You know, I didn't take political sides on this. Jared Isaacman, and I'd like you to identify him in the path to his nomination to be the next director of NASA. And all of a sudden, without stealing your thunder or anybody's, we find out through something that's gone on in the political world, the president decides to what? Retract or remove his nomination, as it was almost what, Rod? Ready to be voted on by the full Senate. Is that correct?
It was going to be confirmed on Tuesday of last week. So I was actually sitting with a senior NASA executive from the Apollo era and beyond when that announcement came out on my phone. And I said, hey, did you hear this? And he and a couple of people with him, their faces just fell. And it's like, what is going on? And we talked about it for quite a while. But the general sentiment was that these guys, you remember the Apollo program. It's an amazing time. It's an incredible time to be alive just to watch it. Imagine working on it. And they said, we created something beautiful with American taxpayer dollars, and we just feel like it's slipping away from us and being destroyed.
And that's strong talk because, this is primarily a Republican body. And that's strong talk for people who have been long-term GOP voters, but they're just really frustrated with what's going on. So Jared Isaacman, self-made billionaire, dropped out of high school at 16 to start this company called Shift for Payments, doing credit card processing. Yeah. Ended up finishing his high school diploma, then went back to college. And after he got rich on that, he started the largest private military jet fighter air force in the world, which he hires out for training to the U.S. Military. And he's a very accomplished pilot himself. So he decided space is the next frontier. So he gets together with Elon and SpaceX, and he's now flown 2 missions. Yes. One was Inspiration 4, with all the proceeds going to St. Jude's Children's Cancer Hospital. And the second one was called Polaris Dawn, which was the highest orbit of anybody since the Apollo program in the first private spacewalk. So very accomplished guy.
Yeah, you got to know a lot about space. I mean, that doesn't guarantee that you're a good manager, but the truth of the matter is, I think this guy is a very good all-around manager. What say you on this? Because, it's just not saying, look, this guy qualifies to go to space. He's a billionaire. God bless him. He knows how to turn a dollar into many. And I can't see one negative on this person, except in the world of politics, right, Rod? Maybe something with the connection with Elon now and the president. The president has a right to do exactly what he wants. What say you on that? I mean, the guy is qualified in my mind, simply.
Well, this was very much an issue of timing, clearly, because it followed the break between Trump and Elon, which, of course, blew up the same day. I've met Jared a few times. I've talked to him a bit. He's a kind-hearted man. He is absolutely a true believer. I mean, here's a guy who donated, I think, I calculated roughly something like 7% of his net worth just on that first flight to St. Jude's Hospital. So,
yeah, that's
and of
amazing.
Course, spent tens of millions doing that, right? So he's into this for the long haul. He's putting his money where his mouth is, way more than most of space billionaires, I'd say, in terms of percentages. He's kind, he's smart, he loves kids. The only thing that worried me and a few other people, and by the way, I'm talking about these guys from the Apollo era and many other NASA people. Everybody I talked to was like, yeah, this guy is what we need. He's new, he's different, he gets it. The only thing that gave me pause is, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, the best NASA administrators were guys that were politicians. They knew where the bodies were buried. They knew when to put on the brass knuckles. Now, that might have been Isaacman. I don't know. But the people being floated for his potential replacement are more in that camp.
Well, let's get Richard's take on this. I mean, Richard, tell me your story. You've been in the broadcast world forever. You meet people. You talk to people, just like we're doing here. What's your take on this? Give us your few cents.
Well, this is the problem with revenge politics, regardless of who's in the White House. And when you have people who are duly qualified, now all of a sudden, who do you associate with? You're guilty by association. No, I'm sorry, you're out. And so we might as well get some knucklehead who has no knowledge whatsoever. I mean, that's what's so sad about the space program today. I mean, I think it's fantastic. You and I have talked about this many times, Doc. That I think it's fantastic that we have private industry, whether it be Musk or Bezos, who are moving our space program forward, along with NASA to some degree, Yes. But I just really have a real problem with this whole aspect.
Let's hear what the listeners have to say out there, guys.
Yeah,
let's hear what the listeners have to say. 1-800-848-9222. If many people are not aware of the situation right now, this is not an attack on any one individual here. It's just more like a kind of a shocker, right, Rod? And Richard's given us his opinion on this thing. But I'm sure there's people out there that have a feeling. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to add one thing before we go to the phones. So in this toddler oatmeal fight between Trump and Musk, and they both have their points of view. They both have some relevant points of view.
Okay.
But as you know, Musk started with you ought to be impeached, and this bill stinks, and it's an abomination, and I hate you, and all that. And then Trump came back with, well, a good way to cut that money that you didn't manage to cut with Doge is to cancel all your programs. Now, if we cancel our contracts with SpaceX, we no longer have a way to the space station that we built, except to pay the Russians to do it, which nobody wants. We no longer have a lunar lander to beat the Chinese back to the moon in 2027, which we hope to do. And we no longer have the Starlink constellation, which is doing a lot to power some of this stuff. So there's a lot of short-sighted rhetoric going back and forth. I hope it's posturing, but these are serious words from people that know better.
Well, absolutely. And again, this is not attack. I'm not attacking the president. I mean, let me say this. No. And I don't want to get into my political side. I'm a supporter of the President of the United States in many ways. I mean, I'll say that proudly here on this station. Do people make mistakes in their lives? Well, I'm not accusing anybody here. It's just that it's a little bit obviously electrifying, to put it in the mildest way possible, when you have a person like that. And I agree with you, Rod Pyle, that here's a young man that's gone and done this. In other words, he's not just a guy sitting behind a desk, even though we need good managers. But he understands what it's like to be part of a space team. And folks, think about it. Wouldn't that be one of the big key catalysts to bind the whole thing as working as a team? If you got somebody that's endured the whole experience of space? Of course, I'm being too simplistic. But again, 1-800-848-9222. I'm kind of worried in a sense of like, this really didn't happen, but it did. But here, before we even go to anybody on the line, I just wanted to jump back and forth on this one. Let's now take on Rod Pyle first. Let's talk about this so-called, spat between the President of the United States and Elon Musk. And you're so right. I mean, if there were cancellations of these contracts, look how long it took us to get away from the Russian Soyuz program and their way to get to space. And that whole time period where we had nothing there after the shuttle, that is severely damaging. And please continue, Rod. You know so much more about this.
Well, I mean, you know plenty, but yes, it was a very dark time. It was probably a little short-sighted to stop the shuttle as quickly as we did. It was very expensive, but it looks like a bargain when you compare it to SLS, at least as it's priced out now, the Space Launch System, which is supposed to take us back to the moon. So, in about 2010, the deputy administrator of NASA, a woman named Lori Garver, an old friend, started really pushing for this commercialization, and they inked contracts with SpaceX and later with Blue Origin and with a couple of other companies, but Congress kept underfunding it. So we had this long, drawn-out thing that took until 2020 to actually start getting those flying. And you know what happened with Boeing. They still haven't gotten Starliner right because it's hard.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Starliner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I hope you didn't fall off your chair.
That's not me.
Well, Richard, we're getting a little bit of feedback over there. Please continue, Rod. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So, and the Russians initially came at us with $36 million per seat per flight in the Soyuz. And by the way, the Soyuz is like sitting inside a phone booth with two other stinky people. It's really, really small and very antique. It was originally designed in the 60s. The smart thing the Russians do is they keep improving this old hardware, which becomes increasingly reliable, but it's well past its expiration date in terms of design and capability.
Yes.
By the time we stopped flying with the Russians, it was costing almost $90 million a seat. So SpaceX starts looking like a real bargain until you cut their contract. But I don't think that was serious talk. I think that was just lashing out.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know politics like a lot of people do out there. I mean, I try to support who I think, like everybody has a right to support the candidate that they believe in. But going back to the common sense of the whole thing, I mean, that just strikes me as, wow, that's pretty wild. So what do you really think from the space perspective of knowing what we think, or you think? We know Elon Musk and we know the President of the United States. Is this just posturing that they're just trying to see how much attention the media will pay to this and divert to other topics? Or is there really, in your opinion, a feud between the two that could really demoralize the whole space program future?
I guess my observation is there are people that they're both sufficiently powerful in their own ways. They don't feel the need to implement a filter, which the rest of us do. We're on radio, 7 dirty words and all that. So we have filtration that we run all the time.
Yeah.
When you're in those positions of power, maybe you don't have to. Now, Musk, of course, is the wealthiest man in the world. At one point, almost $500 billion. And President Trump is President Trump. He's the leader of the most powerful nation in the world. So, but it's interesting, when these guys got together in D.C., everybody I knew in the space trade said, this can't last, I'm just waiting. And it lasted longer than a lot of them expected, but you've got these two fairly powerful egos bumping in the room, and it seemed destined to fall apart. And I think part of it was the whole Doge thing. Regardless of whether you think it was a good idea or not, he did not achieve his goals of $1 trillion plus in cuts. It was maybe $100 billion plus. We're not sure.
Exactly.
So I think that stung. And then, of course, at some point, you were bound to have Trump or somebody in the administration, because this wasn't just Trump. This was other people in the White House who didn't get along with Elon. There's apparently a fist fight with the Secretary of the Treasury at one point.
Oh, yeah, we heard about that. All right. That's amazing.
Yeah, and allegations of drug use, and, who knows. And then, the thing that really got me with Musk, and he's a brilliant man, by the way. I mean, he's a self-trained aeronautical engineer.
Yes, but I'm worried about him, and I say this not in the religious sense or anything, but just as a human being. If the reports of ketamine use and magic mushrooms, I'm not here to decide who should do what, but if you're in that powerful a position, do you not think, ladies and gentlemen, that alters your ability to logically think out things? And if he is a genius, and I think he is, in the development of space technology and other areas, let's leave Tesla out because I'll get in trouble with that one, I'm sure. All the electricity be around that, no pun intended. But isn't that amazing? I mean, don't you think that happens, that has effect on somebody's thinking process? I mean, the president doesn't do that as far as I'm concerned. How can you think logically when that's supposedly the story of the hour? Use of all these substances.
It's a real concern. However, the case of SpaceX in particular, he's got Gwynne Shotwell, who's the president of that company and who runs the day-to-day operations and is a brilliant woman in her own right, with a lot of other brilliant people, but she in particular is kind of the vanguard of this, leading the troops, has held this thing together for years. So Musk is obviously the inspiration and the original money and so forth, but a lot of it, the credit should go to Gwynne Shotwell. The problem is she's set to retire in a few years, rumor mill has it, and we don't know what's going to be up with Elon. So, yeah, this is a great national asset, a critical national asset, especially if we're trying to this return to the moon thing, because they're building the lunar lander. And if something happens to Elon, it is not good. And there was even talk at one point grumbling about maybe we should nationalize SpaceX, which, of course, would be the end of it.
Exactly.
But it's worrisome.
Well, it's apparently, I think Russia has offered him asylum. If I read that report.
Oh, my God, I hadn't heard that one.
I just read that. Again, I don't believe everything I read in the newspaper, nor do the listeners. 1-800-848-9222. And a revival back. Richard, apparently you had fallen into a black hole, but if you're back with us, your take on the Elon and President Trump's situation. What do you feel? Do you think this is a real deal, or is this just hype? These two guys are too smart to really fight, and there's something else going on.
No, I have insights because I just returned from the Singularity, and it was fascinating. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how much credence I put into any of what I hear from the news or the media, social media, et cetera, et cetera. All I know is that there is a desire to continue exploration, and there will be individuals and there will be companies that will come and then they will go. And I don't know if Bezos is really interested in exploration as much as he is interested in creating a very high a ride that people can take at an amusement park to the up into the upper atmosphere. I mean, I just don't know if he's interested in doing more than that. Whereas with SpaceX, they've been servicing the International Space Station, among other things.
It's interesting.
But my my biggest concern, though, is if we continue exploration, how are we going to do that? And you and I have talked about this also, with all of the friggin' space junk that is orbiting the Earth at 18,000 miles an hour.
Well,
I just don't know how we can even do it safely.
No,
well,
that's
let's
a whole
tie it
other
in there. But anyway,
no, you bring up good points, and in the interest of time here, I was going to try to squeeze in so many subjects in this particular hour. And later on, Rod Pyle, a little bit of kind of a somber moment I want to talk about. We talk about this particular subject, about the past history of space. And Richard, on a sad note, and I know you feel this, I would imagine the pain of losing an animal. You had your dog pass, and we had to put the dog down. I guess that's what it is. But that pain, I can't imagine. I've had animals like this, and yes, indeed, it hurts. But later in the program, we're going to get some feeling on that, and maybe the listeners want to chime in on the love of an animal, a cat, a dog, or whatever pet you have. And when you lose it, But going back to the space theme on this, I'm going to bring up some interesting talking points that maybe many people do not know about. The original space dogs that were called, the first one Laika, we'll go into detail later, and the two other Soviet dogs, there were many more, Belka and Strelka. But again, Richard, I pass on my, empathy and sadness about, the loss of your pet. And that's something important too. But before we go to the bottom of the hour here, I just wanted to ask Rod to kind of elaborate a little bit more on this. The future of NASA and their moon project. What say you on that? Where are they on this? Are they stuck? Are they kind of without a director, I guess? There's no helmsman.
Well, it's interesting. This started under Trump 1, and then Biden continued it without touching it, basically. Continued the funding, continued the effort, and it's now continued into Trump 2. We have a moon rocket. It's called the Space Launch System. We've got a moon-capable capsule called Orion. What we don't have is a lander. Now, specific to Jeff Bezos, by the way, he's building on his own money with some government funds, but it's really just a drop in the bucket. He's building a lunar lander. He's building the other lunar lander. So you got Musk trying to convert Starship and Bezos building his. My money's on the Bezos lander because it makes a lot more sense to me, but I'm not an engineer. He's also building a space tug to transit back and forth between Earth orbit and lunar orbit. So he is big into this. It's hard to see it because he's been at it a couple of years longer than Musk, but it was just a very slow grow. But that big rocket's coming. And so what we may have here, we've got NASA primed, we hope, to do a landing in 2027. There's a couple of things standing in the way we can discuss if we have time. But basically, the chips are there. The problem is when you start messing around with the NASA budget, which is going to be cut if the Trump bill goes through without amendment by 24%, and NASA science, which does contribute to lunar landing efforts and Mars, by half, now you've got problems. The one way we might see getting out of this is if there is more involvement of private industry and basically the billionaires are handed the docket and said, look, we'll split this somehow. You put in your money, we'll put in ours. Just get us there because I'm telling you, one way or the other, China is going to land their astronauts on the moon by 2029 because that's the 80th anniversary of the People's Republic of China.
Well, you say it so well, Rod, because you're right. I mean, again, another space race in a lower gear than what it was with the President Kennedy and the mission that we accomplished in '69 and then moving forth with the other Apollo landings. But that's interesting. Later in the program with Richard and yourself, I'd like to comment more and have both of you comment on the reduction of the NASA budget. I mean, they're doing a lot. You have to give NASA a lot of credit, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like government or not, that I believe, in my opinion, they're doing so much with a little compared to so many of these other three-letter alphabet agencies. I mean, isn't that correct, Rod? They have a small amount of money to do a heck of a lot, and most of them, for the average person on the street, poll most people. It's sad to say the majority of Americans do not believe that we should be going back to the moon, and I don't want to be a spoiler by saying it. I'm just reading these different surveys and reports that I get.
And those Americans state that NASA is getting something like 10% of the federal budget. It's 0.5% of 1%. During the Apollo era, at its height, it was 4.5%. So they're operating on 1/10 of the budget and 10 times as many missions easily, because back then it was just Apollo and the occasional probe to Venus, the moon, and Mars. Now we've got stuff all over the solar system. We're still tracking and talking to Voyager 48 years later, which is billions of miles away, well out of the solar system. And we've got a space station to support. So it's a really, really thin dime that they've got to work on. And if you've been to the NASA field centers, you know what they look like. They look like military installations from the 40s because they never spent any money on them. It's all spent on the programs. So I'm very worried about the lunar effort. We still don't have, we haven't built an EVA lunar surface suit since the 60s, and they're working on those, but it's slow. There's still problems with the heat shield on Orion. And then we've got this big bill with the mega rocket at $4 billion a flight. So they've got a lot of stuff to figure out in the next couple of years if this is going to work.
Right. And so does Elon with his Starship. I mean, a lot of people look at it as, they don't really dig deep into it, on the whole story of what they had. Some of these are successes to them, even though the media shows the rocket exploding or them detonating the rocket. This is an interesting story. We're coming up on that hard break, ladies and gentlemen. They call it a hard break at the bottom of the hour here in radio. And you're all familiar with that, but I'd like to have that opportunity to have a dialogue with you, the callers, listeners of this great radio station, 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222 on these specific subjects. And when we come back, we're also going to continue with Richard Dugan of Tell Me Your Story, Rod Pyle, space journalist, as he's been kind enough, both gentlemen, they are giving us their time this morning, talking about these great subjects, astronomy, space, aviation, and weather on the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back with much more, and hopefully with you, ladies and gentlemen.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta Sky Miles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 110,000 bonus miles for a limited time through July 16th. The Delta Sky Miles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends 7/16/25.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. The NBA playoffs are here, and Michelob Ultra is getting you closer to the game than ever with courtside seats and more. Enter now at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access Courtside 2024 to 2025 sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Ends on July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/superior access/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Program note. Tune in Monday morning at 6:45 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time as Sid Rosenberg interviews Harvey Weinstein on Sid and Friends in the Morning in an exclusive interview here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Don't miss it. 32 minutes after the hour, we're joined by space journalist Rod Pyle and a good friend of mine for so many years, Richard Dugan of Tell Me Your Story. His radio show and archive continue on talking about the mysteries of the universe and consciousness. Gentlemen, let's go to the callers because you're lighting up the phone lines. Let's say good morning to Robert in Pearl River. Good morning, Robert. Thanks for joining us and your comment to the show.
Yeah, I have to apologize a little bit. I'm not so much on the space exploration, but I love it in films. But, some people are, I'm not sure Musk and Bezos would be the right pick for this. You know what I mean? These guys, they're not used to being told what to do. Bezos.
You got that right. Yeah.
And he just bought the James Bond franchise. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm sure it's not going to be good like the original. But what this does, it fuels more power for people like Donna Bash, who's going to bash the president and whoever she wants to do. Right. So, Musk is a good guy, but they're both very powerful. They're not, ones that like to be told what to do. So there's going to be fights between them. So not all his appointments will be perfect. I mean, I think Kennedy is excellent and all the other people, but I'm not sure that Musk was the perfect fit, although he has a lot of power and money. And he's a very bright guy, but I'm not sure.
Well, Robert, you bring up some good perspectives. Let me go to Richard Dugan first, your comment on this, and then let's, of course, go to space journalist Rod Pyle. This is an interesting comment. It may not be the right guy, but that's what we got. And how do we work on it? Gentlemen, Richard?
Well, I'm not that familiar with the gentleman. I haven't done a lot of research in that regard. but it is important that we do get someone who is qualified. I don't know, maybe a present astronaut who has those, maybe who has somewhat of a military background, which actually does provide a great deal of leadership in that regard. I in my career, I have worked side by side with everybody that I have ever hired or supervised, and I never considered myself a supervisor. I was a co-worker, even though I was called the operations manager.
Sure.
And that's what I think we need is someone who has, if you will, done the work that they're asking the people at NASA to do.
Rod, your take on this as we go on. Yeah, go ahead, Rod. I'm going to hear your take to get back to Robert.
Yeah, are we talking about Doge or the NASA administrator? I got confused here.
Which one are you talking about, Robert?
I'm talking about Doge, but I'm more suited for that.
Okay.
In the space, I just don't know as much about space exploration. Pardon me on that, but it's hard to pick the right people. You know what I mean? But I just think that most of his picks are really good. I just think that with Elon Musk, I mean, this guy is so wealthy, and he has his own side. I heard he was on the spectrum, but I'm not going to get, the Asperger spectrum, but I'm not sure exactly.
Well, he said he was on the spectrum.
Yes, he did.
He came right out and said that, yeah. Mm-hmm. If I could just break in here for a second.
Yeah, go ahead. You got the floor. Go ahead.
So I've only seen a little bit of Musk's management style firsthand, but his convictions are very strong. When he gets an idea, that's the idea that's going to go through. There isn't a lot of two-way. Fortunately, he's usually right, but running a company that way is not how DC works, as any politician will tell you.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I think Doge was a grand idea and a bad fit. On the NASA side, the rumor mill has it that three-star recently retired General Steve Quast might be next in the lineup. I know him somewhat. I know more about him than I know directly from knowing him. He is a fighter. He's a cold warrior. He had a number of large commands in the Air Force. And I think he's the kind of guy that can take the bit in the teeth and really charge with it. He's a hardcore Trump supporter. And he is a devout Christian. So he will talk about, he's a brilliant man. He talks about his views on space. We've got to be in orbit. We've got to be hard. We've got to defend against China. And there's a lot of risks from orbit. And he's right. If you take down the satellites, our economy crashes in about an hour. On the other hand, he also talks a lot about being a humanitarian. He was raised in Cameroon, Africa, as a kid. His father was a missionary. So he talks about how from space you can get limitless clean power down to the Earth, which is something the National Space Society, my employer, has been working on for decades. And a lot of other stuff, internet service to all corners of the globe and so forth. So I think he'd be a really interesting choice, and that might be the right track to be on. I mean, I love Isaacman, but if we're not going to have him, this guy makes sense.
Well said. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Robert. You get the last word because we got a full deck of callers. This is a great show, and people love it, I'm sure.
The guy he just mentioned sounds like he has all the tools in a mature fit. Even though Musk is bright and he's a millionaire, he seems like sometimes a big kid with a lot of toys,
You bet.
That's what
I don't know, Robert. Hopefully things will settle out between the president, maybe, and Elon. Maybe this is just a big media, publicity thing. Who knows? But, Robert, thanks for being with us on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Thanks,
Let's go across the country right now and say good morning to Dan in Oklahoma, who, if you're a football fan, Dan, I bet you're going to say go Sooners and never Big Red, but we don't know if you're a football fan. But good morning. Your question or comment?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a football fan, but I really am a bigger fan of the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
Hey, there you go, my friend.
I think they're great athletes.
Yes, they are. That's it.
Yes, they absolutely are. And
well, thanks for joining us. I mean, I hope we're enlightening. Well, obviously, you called in. I hope we're enlightening the airwaves and your concerns or comments, or what do you want to add to this show? Please tell us.
Well, here I am. I actually live in Missouri, but I travel all over the country, and I meet a lot of people. So I'm a seventh-generation American related to two people that signed the Declaration of Independence. I have a lot of good friends around this country. One of them used to work for NASA. He worked on the project with the space shuttle, and there's a little story there how they tested the windshield when they were building it. And, he said that what they would do is put sensors in the windshield, and then they would run it down these train tracks and shoot frozen turkeys at it, trying to break the windshield. They would do that on Thursday, and Friday was cleanup day, But the space program is going to take somebody that's financially responsible for a lot of reasons, because it's not really something that America needs. It's something America desires. And I think the needs of the people should be put in front of the desires, and, to do what they need to do, of course, with satellites and all this stuff. And it's important, but just to put some of the things on the back burner for a while until they can develop this into a program that's more fiscally responsible, so we don't go broke in the process of trying to become better.
Well, Dan, you bring up some good points here, but I mean, in the interest of time, hey, I love that you're calling us. God bless you. But on this one, I think, Rod, you have a nice response, I'm sure, or your opinion.
I do, and it's not an opinion. I'll just state the facts. So if we stop servicing and replacing our satellites tomorrow within a matter of weeks, you wouldn't be able to pull money out of an ATM. You would not get produce at the grocery store because agriculture is largely monitored and planned out with orbital assets. You would no longer have weather prediction because weather satellites do all that. Our defense posture would be in shambles because we wouldn't know what's going on overseas. Ships navigating the oceans no longer have GPS and the other systems that tell them where to go. Trucks, railroads, the list goes on. And in fact, I have an article coming up in the next issue of Ad Astra magazine, which I added, called The Day the Earth Stood Still by a brilliant guy named Jordan Strickler. And it's all about a day without space. What happens if suddenly the space program ends and none of this stuff is replaced?
Well, it's exactly what Dan is talking about. You're exactly right, Rod. But here, I just want to jump in on this one. I have to as the host here, like an air traffic controller here. What's the website that people can get in touch with you before the clock runs out at the top of the hour? I want to make sure people can communicate with you. How do they do that?
Thank you. It's pilebooks.com, PYLEbooks.com. I can also be reached through the National Space Society, which is NSS.org, and they can write into the TWIT network where we have the This Week of Space podcast, where, interestingly, last Friday we had Casey Dreyer, who's the space policy guy at the Planetary Society, and we talked for an hour about the NASA budget.
It's great. Dan in Oklahoma, I appreciate you calling in here, and hopefully we've at least tickled the outside of the topic itself to bring it to your attention, and all the others that are listening around the nation and around the world on the Dr. Sky Experience. Thank you, Dan, for being with us. We appreciate your time. Thank you. You know, folks, we're coming up on that next break, and when we come back, I want to defer to Richard Dugan and pay a little homage to the loss of your dog, Angus. And why am I doing that? Because, ladies and gentlemen, that is something so powerful. How does one deal with the loss of an animal, a dog or cat? That's another story unto itself. And, of course, Richard, our hearts go out to you and all the other people. But relating it to the space theme, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about space history and where space dogs actually helped the space program. Something very interesting as we move through time and space here. 1-800-848-9222. And again, if you have emails for me, it's just DRSKY, Dr. Sky, at WABCRadio.com. And another announcement, next week, a very surprise guest that I think you will really enjoy, ladies and gentlemen, and the surprise is out. We're going to be speaking to Don Iles. Who is he? He was a 22-year-old computer scientist that worked at MIT. And what did he do? He developed the computers that the astronauts, particularly Buzz and Neil Armstrong, used, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, on that amazing day in history, July 20th, 1969. He developed the lunar landing computers, something totally amazing. If you want to look it up, folks, it was called magnetic core memory, and a little tiny little calculator that you get, let's say, from a dollar store now. It had probably more memory than the computer that let the astronauts get to the moon. That and much more when we come back here on the Dr. Sky Experience Proud to be with you, ladies and gentlemen, no matter where you're listening or to call us here on WABC.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
47 minutes after the hour, we continue to move to the top of the hour with you, ladies and gentlemen, your questions and comments coming up here. A tribute to Richard Dugan's sad passing of Angus, a beloved dog. I wanted to do this tribute to space dogs, and many people may not know this. The first dog in space was the Soviet dog known as Laika. The translation, her name was Barca, and sadly she perished in space, but that was back on November the 3rd, 1957, the first dog to orbit the Earth. She passed away in space. She was part Samoyed and part Husky. But two other promising stories in the Soviet space program. How about dogs Belka and Strelka? They were on Sputnik 5 back on August the 19th, 1960. And that particular dog had 6 pups, Strelka. And one of those pups from Strelka was given to President John F. Kennedy, and they named it in the White House Pushinka, meaning fluffy. The Kennedy dog, Charlie, mated with Pushinka, and 4 pups, they were called Pushinkas, or little pupniks. And now, what I'm saying is, in tribute to Richard's dog, who passed, there are many other iterations of the combination of the Soviet dog and an American dog, somewhere living in America in peace. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? Let's go to Silas in Staten Island. Staten Island, you've been patient. Good morning. Your question or comment?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on one with Elon and Trump. This will blow over. Cooler heads will prevail, and there are 2 men who want to prosper America. So, there are plenty of people fall out, and sometimes when you have arguments with someone, you end up being better friends than you were when you first started. And as far as
I'm hoping the same thing. Mm-hmm.
And as far as the space programs, like when the girls went up in that spaceship from
Blue Origin, right? Bezos,
yeah, Blue Origin.
Mm-hmm.
People were talking about why did girls go up. They didn't look at the real thing here is the fact that the ship worked. Who cares if girls went up in it, or if a monkey went up and went it? The fact is that ship that he used to get up there is going to be like a go-kart to a Formula One racer in 10 years. Mm-hmm. Just like how long did the Kitty Hawk flight last? And now look what we've gotten in aerodynamics. It's one step to innovating, and to me, it was to be celebrated. It's his girlfriend. Let his girlfriend take whoever she wants.
I agree. It should be an equal opportunity for females, just the same as men. And if they want to go up, whether they didn't pay or not, you're right. That's not the point. It's that more and more enthusiasm. Imagine how many young people, Silas, out there, young women and young men, they see this, and hopefully that might get them to a career in what? Aviation, aeronautics, and space. It's all good, and you say it so well. We're going to move forward, Silas. Thank you so much for being part of the show with your opinion. Let's say good morning to Tony in New Jersey. Tony, you're on with our special guests, Rod Bile and Richard Dugan. How are you this morning?
Well, good morning, gentlemen. I'm so excited about your conversation. Growing up with the astronauts as a youngster, it really made an impression on my country. And tonight, I was thinking about Elon Musk, and I certainly wish him the best and thank him for what he's done for the Doge program. But certainly, and we talk about infinity, our talent is enormous. And tonight I was looking at our astronauts, and there's one that caught my eye that is really talented and that may have a place in the space program. And you may agree and you may not, but his name is Harrison Schmitt, and he's an astronaut and a geologist, and he's the 12th man to walk on the moon. What's interesting about him is that he was the most recent to walk on the the moon, and he was influential with the new community of geologists supporting the Apollo program. And he remains the only professional scientist to have flown beyond low Earth orbit and to have visited the moon. And so he is, he's actually a Republican, which kind of helps, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, he was a former senator in New Mexico, Tony, and I knew him, and I'm sure, Rod, did you know him personally, too? I mean, I've met him many times.
Not well, no, but I certainly know what he did, and she's right. I mean, in that last Apollo slot, they were finally able to get a professional geologist up there, and it made a huge difference.
Tony, here's a funny story, and I don't mean to cut Rod off. Here at ASU, there's the ground station for something called the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And if you go there to ASU on the campus, there's this little area there with that spacecraft has behind glass where they're monitoring it. And it's a little spacecraft that takes pictures. So every once in a while, the people tell me, hey, there's this old man, and of course I don't mean it that way. They did, the young people, who comes in a Hawaiian shirt a lot of times. He's probably in his 80s. And when he says, I'd like to see the pictures of the moon, they go, who are you? And he said, I was one of the last men on the moon. And a lot of them didn't believe him. But it is Harrison Schmitt. He comes out here often. That's good.
Right.
Tony, you bring up some good points, too. I appreciate you, and I hope that we're hitting it on all cylinders with the topics that we're trying to present here. In your opinion, I hope we're doing a good job. Well, thank you so much. Well, Richard, let's give a synopsis here again as we memorialize Angus, a little story about spaced animals and, of course, the pain and loss of an animal. I have no idea. I hope I don't. We have a beautiful dog, but I don't know. Your comment to us as we phase out at the top of the hour. Tell us.
Well, I will say that dealing with the passing of an animal is part of the package. If you choose to have an animal in your life, let's just say it's a canine and you have him as a puppy or her, you are going to most likely outlive them. And we have actually laid to rest probably, oh my goodness, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think Angus is actually 8, and we've had him for 13 years. Wow. One of the questions that comes to mind that I put to you is, how did they, whether it be the Soviets or the American space program, how did they decide that it was a dog that they would send, or a monkey, or any other animal? How did they?
Well, Richard, I'll cut you short on this because of time here. Here's the situation.
Yeah, I understand.
They found this dog in the streets of Moscow, and I'm sure Rod knows a lot about this too. They wanted a dog that was not a pedigree. They wanted a dog that was basically just running around searching for food. And I'm not saying I condone the way they treated the dog, because in many cases, Laika, of course, I don't think was treated very well, and that's very inhumane. But they picked a dog, and they did this, and sadly Laika passed, but Belka and Strelka survived, and a few other dogs did. But, Richard, I appreciate it. Tell us your website, because time is of the essence here, and I do hate to cut people off because, like I said, it's always about the guest and not so much about the host. Tell us how people can reach you.
I'll make it quick. Richard at richarddugan.com. Website is richarddugan.com, and my book is Choices, 5 Steps for Life, available on Amazon.
Well, we appreciate you, Richard, and we'll talk to you soon, and thank you for being part of this as we memorialize the passing of Angus and relating it to somewhat of a positive side of how animals helped, not only humans, there were monkeys and other animals that helped pave the way to space, but hopefully they'll be treated with kindness and care in the future. Rod Pyle, always a great guest, just like Richard and others that we have on this archive. How do people get in touch with you, sir? And again, many thanks for having you on the radio.
As I said, through pylebooks.com, pylebooks.com. You can contact me directly through there. And you can also go to adastermagazine.com, where you can subscribe to the magazine I work so very hard to put out every quarter. And by the way, the Russians apparently trained and flew a large percentage of a group of 57 dogs, which I didn't realize.
I had no idea. See, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Rod. Wow. That's amazing.
Boy, isn't that
they
something?
Like the dogs. They do, but hopefully they'll treat animals in the future with the dignity and respect.
I hope so.
Gentlemen, stay with us as the clock runs out, but I wanted to do what I'm asked to do here and haven't done it for a long time, and that is your general sky update. Folks, this is powerful stuff. I'm sitting here in Arizona right now looking out at this nearly full moon. The big, beautiful full moon of June is the strawberry full moon, or the honeymoon as it's called. Officially, June the 11th at 3:44 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. What makes this moon very unique is that they talk about a major lunar standstill. What's that? It's when the moon rides very low along the zodiac path in the heavens, and that indeed you'll be seeing the moon if you have clear skies. That particular beautiful full strawberry or honeymoon will take a very shallow arc across the southern sky, the lowest it can do, and that, of course, is one of the lowest passages in years. But here we go, as we finally end our sad, not sad, but this moment in time. The moon will be in a very strange constellation, and if you've all been told that there are 12 signs of the zodiac, think again. The moon will occupy a constellation called Ophiuchus. What is that? He's a witch doctor. Now, that's a constellation sandwiched in between Scorpius and the Sagittarius constellation. When you look at the moon on that morning and into the next night, to the right is a beautiful red supergiant star called Antares, about 500 light years away. The beauty of the moon in the summer brings us to some of the most amazing mind experiences. The out-of-body thing, the beauty of the nighttime sky, opening our senses and breathing in. Don't miss it. It's a beautiful, beautiful sight, in my opinion. And for all of you getting away from city lights, if you're taking vacations, bring a pair of binoculars with you when the moon is not in the sky as you look deep into the nighttime. As you look around midnight on a dark, moonless night, let's say later in June and July, the central hub of our Milky Way, 27,000 light years away. May you be given the peace and happiness of sharing with yourself or others the beauty of the universe. Thanks to Rod Pyle. And thank you, Richard Dugan. And thank you, Bill, for navigating this very powerful starship as he's our helmsman, moving us through time and space. It's been a privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, being with you. And if you have questions and comments, like I said, drsky at wabcradio.com. And check us out as our archive continues for podcasts. Tell your friends and neighbors if you enjoy the show, because we appreciate you. Gentlemen, we thank you for being with us, and may peace and happiness be with everybody. And as we like to say on this radio archive, clear skies to all. Next week, some exciting stories to be told as we talk with you about the great subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. Celebrity guests in the mix, American exceptionalism. What could be better than that? You let us know. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?